This could have been the race like any else, with start, a bit of racing and then the finish at the end. However, this time it included pretty nasty crash over the bars and then a tiny spice to that. Quite a lot of ups and downs during this race, as well as playing the games. And last but not least, there were some drama.
What the fuck is wrong with you?
So if you're into dramatic things, this might be a race analysis for you. With that said, my name is Tomas aka Tom10 Crafted, and today we are at Otapa, Estonia, where Tartu Marathon is going to happen for 26th time. So while in the past I believe this event has been called Tartu MTB, this year you will see that it turned into a bit something different. So at the start you can see that there are a lot of people. I'm starting from the first gate, and funny that elite woman with 10th number, I believe she's from Latvia, standing in front of me. The start was very fast, and I had made a decision that this time I'm not going to push like crazy on the meadow aside without any wind protection, etc. But 1 minute into the race I decided to change my plans. I am going on not the mostly rolling section in order to just overtake some participants. And before the start, before the race, I checked how this initial few kilometer section is going to look like, and I noticed that it has some wet areas and at the same time bumpy ones, and we are approaching one of those bumpy sections. And keep an eye with the guy who just overtook me with light bibs. Yeah, it was a bit of an unlucky moment for him, but probably even more lucky was his bike. I guess the front wheel either slipped or stuck into the meadow and he went over the bars, and then to add additional spice to it, our guy didn't manage to stop. You know that video from Swiss Epic where in berms someone jumps over the fallen bike? So yeah, that was how it didn't end up. So actually that crash was a bit of a decisive moment because it opened the gap from the front group, and I had a very hard time to keep up with that. And you can learn from my mistakes that as I've been trying to catch that group, I overtook those with gravel bikes and decided that I'm going to be faster here. Well, probably I should have just tried to save a bit more energy, even though it's the beginning of the race. But on the tarmac with the full MTB, I was going on Scott's Park RC Pro bike, so it's full suspension one. You can see that I'm not even able to sit on anyone's wheel who are just passing by, and the 72nd number peed 8 minutes into the race. So after a climb he probably decided that he should lose some weight. And I would like to draw your attention at the speed and the power output I'm generating here. So the guy who is on the gravel is not pedaling at all, he's just coasting down on the downhill. Myself, I'm going 62 kilometers per hour, not too much, but I'm generating 600 watts and I'm not even closing that gap. So that's an indication how different it is when you go on MTB versus the gravel bike. And from that point, whenever someone passed me, I just didn't have any hopes to try to draft on their wheel, and my hopes were in less rolling sections, but those hopes disappeared. For 5 minutes I rode in headwind on gravel road alone. And I saw that the group is approaching at the back, but usually I'm not from the ones who just waits the group. I kept on pedaling at my own pace, and if the group catches me, that's fine. If it don't, then at least I will get closer to someone else, even though you can't see them at the moment. So in order to go leg by leg with someone who's on the gravel, you can see that it requires pretty much watts. So I assume that gravel bike is somewhere from 8 to 9 kilometers in weight, probably, while my full suspension bike is 11 kilograms. So this is not complaining, this is just pure facts. So you can imagine what is the difference in terms of acceleration and climbing abilities. But despite of that, I was more or less able to find someone to ride on those fast rolling sections. So 12 kilometers into the race, I'm already more than 2 minutes behind the leader, and it's 98th position. Last year was my first time when I participated in Tartu Marathon, and it was wet condition, and somehow in my mind I imagined that this is going to be a lot more MTB-like course. Maybe during the wet conditions it was. On dry it was pretty fast rolling, but I'm even not exactly sure whether it was better rolling on wet or on dry, because when it's too dry on the gravel it becomes loose, and when it's loose it sucks you down into the ground. So when such situations happen for guys on the gravel, it's been a bit of a struggle. Myself, I felt like with 2.25 at front and 2.2 at the back, I just cut straight down through those sections and had less problems. My problems were to sit on the wheel on the gravel roads after the gravel bike. When you watch this video, I would strongly suggest you to take a look at the data at bottom left corner, where you can see watts, as well as maybe speed, but more or less watts are more important. For example, in this case, I just decided to make a sip, and at that moment guys started to accelerate, and even though I am still pedaling 300 watts, it's not enough, and they are opening the gap which later has to be closed. So these type of spikes were very usual for me in this race, but whenever I knew that in front there's going to be some sort of grass section, I always try to move up in the group. The reason I have been doing that is that if someone is a bit slower, then the gap might open up, and I don't want that. At the same time, I want to go on to MTB in those a bit harder sections as fast as I can. That kind of gives me an edge against the gravel bikes. But then it's like 10% out of whole distance, slow rolling sections, or at least more bumpy compared to the gravels. It was like super hard effort. And at some point when you are in the middle of a group, things seems to stabilize a bit, but at the acceleration points you just don't have enough capacity to go there. Then in the course was time measurements. I added that information at the center of the screen. Definitely the time from the leader increased, but at the same time my position kept on moving up, so that was good. You won't be able to see it properly, but here was water ditches, and on the left there was a bike on the gravel, and we kind of at some point almost locked our handlebars. Thankfully his handlebars were gravel-like and we didn't make that collision, but the speed was huge and it was a bit of a moment which was sketchy. So the reason I came here, the full suspension MTB, is because I'm going to participate in other race as well in Estonia, but at the same time I kind of don't have gravel. While I have a hardtail, it might be a better option indeed to go in such race on it, but as I chosen full suspension due to other race reasons, I just went with what I have. And talking about what I have, I added 36 tooth chainring oval, absolute black, for this race, and I used it last year, and I think that it's a good choice. Well, maybe 38 could be also optional, but I almost didn't have time when there was not enough gears. I waited very much for the section in the course when it begins to be a bit more rough. And even though it was pretty dry compared to last year, that section was like fresh breath of air after all those gravels, and I enjoyed it very much. Probably also because I kind of opened the gap from the group a bit, and you can see my segment time was 20th on the day, so that means MTB bike in that particular section was nice. And I knew that upcoming from the last year is pretty steep uphill, short but steep, and last year I was not able to climb there because it was wet, and if you just slip the wheel, you are going off the bike. So this time it was success for me, and I didn't even sit on the gravels when it was optional, but kept moving ahead. At this part I felt really great, and those harder sections was like a boost to me. Unfortunately, you could have seen Artūras Kazakavičius struggle for it, who had a puncture. He managed to reach the finish, but the result was not there for him. So yeah, it was very nice to go in those sections, and then you see in front someone you are trying to catch, and you see that you are closing that gap. It's just nice. But then you see the guy from Sigulda, Janis Davis, who is overtaking you. It would be a very stupid move not to go on his wheel, because Janis is an expert in getaways. I knew that from the last year, where we've been in the same group for a while and he just disappeared in more technical sections. So this year, Janis, I knew your plans, and I actually went ahead of you and tried your plan on my own. Janis is more experienced and technical rider than I am. It was good to have him in front here, and even though the area was not too much technical here, but with MTBs we ruled for a few tenths of minutes, and at some point the pace which Janis set was almost deadly for me, so I hardly kept sitting on his wheel. And at the same time I was wishing that finally these sections ends up and Janis led off a bit. Once we went on the gravel, I was totally busted by Janis and was not having any plans to go in front, but thankfully some other guy did, and we kept on moving on this yet another gravel road. I'm not from those who just sit on a wheel and I go in front when I have opportunity for that. So on the gravel road I've been in front, but Merili Sirvel was taken care by some other Estonian guy and pulled her so fast that I had extremely hard time to even catch them. And you can see that my time in this segment was also very fast, so I was completely busted here. And Merili, after sitting on the wheel, moved to the side like go ahead in front. I was not positive on that idea either, because it was gravel road and I had very hard time. So more or less whole race it was very hard time for me, and this section we put our finger to. Here you can see that on time stamp I was in 63rd position, more than 12 minutes from the leader. So Merili from that point started to pushing really fast. So yeah, I figured out after her about the race only, but she was pushing really hard. And thanks for the guy with bib number 98 who managed to let me know that the bottle in my back was going to get off, and he spent that time explaining me the situation, and that even caused the gap in front to open up. So thanks for that. The bottle was saved and we kept on moving in this forest road. We're approaching the moment of the race where a culmination and the high point almost went over the roof. So basically it happened because Merili was riding quite a lot of in front, and the guy with orange jersey, orange bluish one, went in front to help her, or it was me. Actually, at the first time when she overtook me, I had a thought that I shouldn't help her because there was our Lithuanian probably chasing her. But at some point of the race I realized that there are no gifts, and because she's riding really fast, it would be unfair to not help her. So that was my thought process, and it was nothing personal. But at the same time, I realized that if we only going to go after her, chances are high that our group coming from behind will catch us. So it's just stupid move to do. And last but not least, looting on the woman for second part of the race. It's like no matter how strong she is, it doesn't matter, and you just have to switch if you are going for a higher goal. And that higher goal in this case was the group which was in front. So it was around 20 seconds or maybe even a bit less in front of us, and I was very surprised that no one was willing to go for that extra hunt, shall we say. So after being in front, I was almost dead here, so my heart rate on the day was 185 at the most, and we are almost at 180. So they really kind of tried to show that someone just go in front. I was not going to do that, as I just been, and on that moment I just broke over and shouted like, it was a stranger shame for me to see the guys on the gravel bike sitting on MTB and Merili's wheel at the same time. I can understand those who've been on MTB, so yeah, surely they might not be able to go in front. But those with gravel bikes, it was like sitting on the wheel and going to the finish for 25 kilometers is not something you can cherish at the end of the race. If you didn't work for it, you are actually not worth it. After the race, I wrote in Strava that hopefully that 50-something or 60-something position warms your heart. And I actually didn't change my mind. It remains the same. So hopefully that warms your heart, that not working at all for remaining 20 kilometers and then accelerating when few remains, that's what I can tell about such behavior. It's not acceptable by me, and that's just my way of thinking. So I was having a very hard time to keep up with those who overtook me near the end, and I was kind of letting them go because I was frustrated at the same point and I didn't felt that I have anything left. But at some point I found some strength. Yeah, I stopped at the Sigulda section, so that was very stupid move. But I still managed to close that gap, and I was waiting to do that finish sprint. And it was a clash of few unsuccessful moments where the guy in front matched the time that I was going up, and it was like a pause and then yet another pause, and it was like a few hundred meters towards the finish, it was over. And the fact is, everyone who been in our group, around 15 people or so, overtook Merili, but thankfully there was no other woman in that group, and she managed to take the first place. So congratulations, Merili. It was an amazing job on your end, and yeah, I managed to finish at 65th position overall, and it was more than 15 minutes from the leader. So it's 65th position from 1,700 something, and 29 out of 240 participants in the age group. So after the finish, I congratulated Merili. I didn't know that she won it, but she did a great job, so that was just applaud for her. And now you'll be able to see how Janis Juriso described his experience, probably for the first time doing Tartu MTB with gravel bike.
But it was also like, I was holding from here and it's like doing like this, and then you just like constantly get that.
So that's how first race in Estonia ended up. What's next?
I don't need to analyze. Every word that comes out is a lie. Make it look like it's so ice. You won't make it to the finish line.
So actually I'm going to participate in the Hania 100, so that's the reason why I took full suspension bike. Maybe someone with gravel would like to do it. I would love to see that happen. That said, to wish me good luck, and maybe we will meet in Hania 100 as well. So until next. Oh, and by the way, the reason why I came to Tartu MTB for the second time, while it has almost nothing to do with MTB, is because I wanted to check whether last year's result, I finished 79th, was coincidence or not. So this year, even though it was 3 kilometers shorter distance and pretty dry conditions, I managed to cut down quite a lot of time, and probably it was not once in a lifetime experience last year. So yeah, that was the reason.